Throughout the great global conflict, the British rural landscape was, in Churchill's phrasing, dotted with aerodromes, past 700 of those. Many have long since vanished. Others, although deserted, remain still. This represents RAF Hemswell within Lincolnshire, which since the close of 1943 was flying Avro Lancasters for No. 1 Group Bomber Command. It is daybreak. The morning crew has replaced the evening, installing a Rolls-Royce Merlin motor to substitute one wrecked in combat. There are 2 Lancaster units stationed at Hemswell, 150 and 170, with a formal allocation of 20 planes apiece. There are merely 2 extra bombers accessible, and even if planes fallen in battle are substituted, the units are required to preserve their combat power through local fixes. To reach this, RAF mechanics labor throughout the day, as this is a period when, evening after evening, the message maximum exertion follows the combat instructions from Bomber Command. In periods of tranquility, a motor swap might require a week. Throughout World War II, it is finished in exactly 5 hours. Active bombers seldom enter the sheds, all standard maintenance and small fixes being performed at the parking spots across the aerodromes. It is likewise unusual for them to merely expire, since the combat life duration of a Lancaster bomber totaled just 40 hours flight period. The casualties, for the most part, are from Nazi night interceptors. To aid resisting these strikes, this group substitutes the 4 303 weapons in the back cupolas with double 50s, which possess a much higher striking force. The task of servicing and charging the weapons is performed by the technicians. Now, the fluid lifting of the weapons is verified. However, a much more potent protection for the bombers arrives not from the technicians, but from the experts with RCM, radio countermeasures. These are the digital instruments of the hidden battle that is conducted outstep and counterstep within the dark heavens above Germany, using hushed labels, Oboe, G, H2S, and window, all employed either to baffle the protections or to lead the bombers toward the objective and back again. A functional RAF bomber base and its outposts has a force of 2,600 leaders and personnel, all straight or indirectly supporting the planes and their teams. Inside them, the imaging department, who presently come with equipment which supply a vital way of verifying the team's efficiency. But what we witnessed is merely the peak of a sophisticated structure. Bawtry Hall, center of No. 1 Group Bomber Command. The morning at center starts, like every other in 1944, by assessing and scrutinizing the outcomes of yesterday evening's strike, while the workers are anticipating the message from Bomber Command, which shall hold the specifics of the objective for today. Amidst the RAF leaders at Group Command are non-military analysts and contact officials from the different branches. Within this instance, a commander from the military's anti-aircraft department, who, along with further colleagues of the crew, are drafting a thorough account on yesterday evening's strike by this division's planes. The WAAF wing official picture evaluator has marked on yesterday evening's objective chart the drop location of every plane's munitions, as shown by the robotic equipment, for study by the division's air official leading. And the charts and filmic copies are brought to the AOC's gathering. The AOC, an air brigadier and a flyer personally, is skilled in picture evaluation. Aerial scouting planes have flown over the objective at early dawn. Their data on film frequently varies from the aviator's occasionally overconfident assertions during questioning. The AOC currently strictly reviews the post-strike records. The picture evaluator has marked the specific strikes on the objective. AP represents the assigned targeting spot of the strike. The dropping precision is studied three-dimensionally and the findings debated. The findings of yesterday evening's strike are now purely the interest of the tacticians at Bomber Command. Inside the mission hall at Bawtry, the crew are getting specifics of tonight's objective. It shall be the major metropolis, Berlin, and is a peak exertion strike. At this point, there are merely 6 hours before the initial of the division's bombers shall depart. Before that exists a vast amount of readiness and precise plotting. The range to the objective is calculated, and the petrol and munition weight is determined. The objective shall now be disclosed to the expectant unit leaders. For this, the mission official creates a concurrent phone and teletype circuit to alert all number 1 group units on adjacent combat aerodromes. The mission proceeds as the data official requests Berlin scout images and the objective charts for the AOC's midday plotting assembly that shall handle tonight's strike. The specific objectives and targeting spots for number 1 group shall now be identified. The charts are consequently verified and matched with images of the prior strike on this objective. Then they are brought to the gathering. The AOC's assembly is crucial since it aligns the planes from number 1 group with bombers from different divisions also participating in the strike. Evening bombers travel mostly hidden from each other. Thus, a rigid schedule of paths, intervals, heights, and velocity is vital to gather the strike and prevent crash. There shall be 600 bombers above the objective in only a 20-minute window. To reach this level of gathering, the primary necessity is to learn what the climate shall be toward, above, and back from the objective. The Met Bureau is one of the scant units at group manned by civilians. The head Met official debates the prediction with his crew and then brings the weather map to the assembly to provide the AOC a Met summary for the strike. Since the European climate patterns usually shift from west to east, the RAF holds a benefit over the Luftwaffe. Nevertheless, atmospheric prediction in 1944 continues to involve a component of fortune. The AOC understands this and queries his personal Met origins. Thus briefed, the climate is debated. The primary anxiety is the peril of mist. Throughout the meeting, the AOC gets a path adjustment from Bomber Command, perhaps as a consequence of a scouting flight unit mission. By 1944, wireless helps for steering. H2S, G, and Oboe have allowed the lead planes to release TIs, which means target indicator lights, with almost exact precision. This targeting spot is picked since the waterway shall provide a clear echo on the plane's H2S radar, assisting the navigators to obtain a definite location. Yet there is a lengthy approach across a density of intense flak. Within the group mission room, the workers start the minute plotting. The sea official is arranging a mine seeding task in the Baltic. The team makeup of every plane of the group units is gathered from the name lists provided nightly from the Aerodromes. Almost all of the teams shall have been above Germany throughout the previous week, at minimum once, maybe twice, although several shall be starting their initial mission, substituting teams that failed to return. For every Lancaster lost, 7 aviators go lost with it. The mission official is drafting the Form B, the specific missions for every unit. A job demanding high focus. The finished document is verified by the lead mission official. Form B holds specifics of munition weights to be moved by every separate bomber of the group. The document is endorsed and verified. The instructions are now formal and are brought to the teletype office to be sent at once across guarded wires to the units located on the Lincolnshire aerodromes of number 1 group. North Killingholme, East Kirkby, Fiskerton, Elsham Wolds, Carmington, Binbrook, Faldingworth, Wickenby, and Hemswell. RAF Hemswell, by Gainsborough, is one of the 50 active aerodromes of Bomber Command, which this daybreak in 1944 are getting ready for tonight's strike on Germany. A Lancaster is getting gas. It shall use nearly the whole 2,500-gallon weight from this truck. The surfaces of the Lancaster hold the gas containers, carrying 2,154 British gallons. From data accounts and study of wrecked Lancasters, the Nazi evening pilot flyers know precisely where to point their 20mm gun. While formally, only the unit leaders at Hemswell so far know of tonight's objective, the clever ground crews on the trucks shall have gained a firm notion from the gas weights requested for the bombers. Plentiful containers mean far distance, likely Berlin. The munition store. This is shielded by explosion barriers and is far apart from the planes and other aerodrome buildings. Those are 500-pound common-use destruction munitions. They are unarmed and are thought, at least by the technicians, harmless. 500-pounders constitute the foundation of most munition loads and are placed 6 at once onto unique carriages. A 4,000-pound cookie. The cookie is essentially a pressure bomb intended to detonate on impact and possesses a light shell. Although unarmed, 4,000 pounds of amatol requires and receives deference. The engine pulling the 500-pounders stays at a cautious gap until the cookie is securely parked on its carriage. The technicians are gathering the munition load for one solitary Lancaster, 12 500-pounders and one single 4,000-pounder. 10,000 pounds of high explosive. A humble weight for a Lancaster, which may, with slight adjustment, carry the massive 22,000-pound Grand Slam seismic munitions. The priming shack. There are various distinct kinds of primers which may be attached to the munitions, triggering them either at contact or stalling their blast for hours or perhaps days so as to create peak disturbance to the foe. The transport caps are detached from a cookie, the trigger holes are inspected, and then the triggers and launching mechanisms are attached. The tiny propeller shall prime the munition during its drop from 20,000 feet. It is briefly secured to stop the breeze or a plane's airflow accidentally priming the munition during transport. Every one of these lines is one Lancaster munition load, some with high explosives, some with crates of fire bombs, some a blend of both. A Lancaster waits at parking with its munition hatches ajar and a group of technicians ready. The engine with its munition line appears. It then performs a full lap of the bomber, not for some symbolic reason, but merely to position the carriages with the 10,000 pounds of munitions before the plane, it being unfeasible for the engine to back up 4 carriages. Moving the primed munitions is difficult and demanding. In one day, in every weather, at this solitary aerodrome, 40 Lancasters shall be munitioned up, a major bodily effort for the technicians. The plane raises the cookie using its own pulleys. It's a snug fit. The smaller munitions follow. Even the minor slope of the parking makes the technician's job tougher. The 500-pound munitions are attached in couples to frames, which house the electronic dropping system. Those are adaptations initially created for solitary 1,000-pound munitions, which the RAF no longer employ. Therefore, the frames may give the technicians trouble. As the munitions are pulled up, caution must be used so they do not hit the plane's frame. One informal help is the plane's team stairs. Loading up is not just tough manual labor, it is likewise perilous. Because of electronic and technical failures, munitions can and have dropped, hurting the technicians. On the 15th of March, 1943, a 4,000-pound cookie detonated while loading at Scampton. Various individuals were killed, 6 Lancasters were completely ruined, and another 5 severely wrecked. Only a segment of the 2,700,000 tons of high explosive released on German objectives during World War II. This Lancaster is gassed, checked, loaded up, and expects its team. It is presently late evening. Flyers, navigators, and target setters are summoned to the meeting. They appear by truck or on the common government bicycles, without which no RAF base, most spanning about 500 acres, could operate. The flyer with the canine is Flight Lieutenant Harris, master of the Victor. As they go into the meeting shack, most of the aviators will have sensed the rumor that tonight's objective is likely Berlin, not a favored journey. Their desires or anxieties will in a second be proven, as every gaze on entering the shack finds the big wall chart. It proves past any uncertainty the objective is Berlin. The teams are called to stillness as the base, station, and unit leaders go into. Army etiquette having been followed, the meeting now starts. Initially, the Met guy. There exists a chilly wave across the North Sea in this spot, but shifting eastward. Climate for departure is fine.
And the cyclone has been head over the last 2 days. It's drifted a little bit east-southeast.
The aviators take precise records. The climate is of crucial significance. Not that they think the Met guy perfect, far from it, but one forever praise. Freezing height, 5,000 feet. Above the objective, state should be clear, with merely the risk of scattered haze. And exiting the objective, the chilly wave will need to be retraversed. Met overbase on return is doubtful. Late returns could encounter fog. Any questions? Thank you. After the Met officer, the flying control officer. His duty will be to get Hemswell's 40 large bombers fired up and moved from their parkings into a split-second flow departure without losing clock and gas, all without the help of wireless, for the foe is recognized to be eavesdropping to gather any hints that could suggest tonight's objective. The primary east-west strip is to be utilized, and the tower official cautions about tardy exits from the remote parkings, and finishes by alerting his teams the final departure shall be at sunset.
We'll let you know your target area and time of takeoff then.
The data official. His summary arrives from numerous origins: aerial scouting, team questioning, spies, the cipher crackers. The path that the bombers shall travel is moved from the wall chart to the navigator's maps. They also record many crucial specifics: the location of path marker lights, recognized densities of flak, evening interceptor bases, the pulse and naming of wireless helps, G and Oboe. And most vital to the teams, the quickest path back should their plane be wrecked. The data official is alerting the teams that tonight's path exists between Hamburg and Bremen, both quite intensely guarded. The teams are instructed to strike from 20,000 feet and depart the strike zone with a broad shift to right. On path back, lights shall show when to halt windowing. Window is the label for slim pieces of foil released in masses by the plane to block Nazi radar. Above the objective, scarlet and emerald lights released by the lead planes shall show the objective zone. Target setters shall aim for the middle of the scarlet lights. The meeting proceeds with the unit leader, a skilled bomber flyer, having finished at least one cycle of missions. He stresses the necessity of targeting at the TIs, not the blazes. The Nazis are clever at setting fake blazes in rural lands. He also warns the teams regarding faux evening interceptors, of which they are merely too highly conscious. The station leader, another flyer with many missions behind him, stresses to the navigators the perils of straying off path between Hamburg and Bremen, and alerts the flyers of the necessity of exact clocking and height holding to stop crashes, gather the strike, and so crush the guards.
Watches, gentlemen. It will be 14:26.
The chief meeting is now finished, as the steering head gets the gathered teams to match their clocks.
Now.
A closing remark from the base leader, an air brigadier. He highlights the necessity of the objective, the German center, and hands on a note from the C&C bomber Harris. Strike them where it pains most and best fortune. He joins his own best hopes. As the AOC exits, the youthful aviators recognize that they shall require all the best fortune they can find. For they also recognize that lately, past 90 evening bombers were ruined on one solitary strike, and surely some of those, now kidding and grinning, shall not be coming home. Harris and his six-man team collect their flight gear, which is kept and cared by expert crews, many of those WAAFs. The aviators sign for the most vital things on which their lives might very well hinge, their chutes and Mae West swim vests. The chutes, which are normally silk, even if Yankee nylon packs are starting to be utilized, are of the scout chest kind, which are not worn inside the plane, but kept to allow easy motion and fixed on only when needed. Many flyers, who do not need to shift, however, still utilize the total belt and pack, which makes up part of their chair, and that is, they moan like resting on stone. After the chutes are handed, the teams collect the tools to their boxes and put their private flight garments, including the woolly Irving coats. The furred flight shoes, much valued by Yankee flyers, since RAF shoes, unlike their own, do not slip off when jumping out of the plane, are utilized with silk hosiery to allow the bomber teams to endure the severe chill of mostly unheated planes traveling at great heights. Coldness of minus 40 degrees Celsius are frequent. The sirens, fixed to the combat suit necks, are to help teams to find each other in the case of landing in the North Sea. There is now slightly over 1 hour staying to depart. The total teams of separate planes are gathered, the wireless workers and shooters, who have had a separate meeting, linking the others. A bomber team normally stays together for their cycle of 30 missions, even though their odds of finishing it are merely 1 in 3. They are, to everyone, enlistees, bank staff, pupils, mechanic workers, store help, tutors, youths from every social path from across the realm. Transit is required, since the planes are scattered across the aerodrome. Several will be up to 2 miles distant. By the close of 1944, Lancasters supplied no less than 42 units. Diverging from its peers, the Sterling and the Halifax, the Lancaster was never utilized by the RAF for any goal other than what it was built, striking. It is suitable for nothing but that type of battle at which it is dominant. The Avro Lancaster was initially built by Roy Chadwick as a double-motor bomber to be called Manchester. The motors utilized were of a fresh build Rolls-Royce Bawtrys, which would turn out one of that firm's rare mistakes. Chadwick then adapted his build to utilize 4 Rolls-Royce Merlins, and the Lancaster, as it was retitled, turned into the premier large bomber of the Second World War. The cost was immense. Past 4,000 Lancasters were to be destroyed in battle, and where much of this movie was filmed, number 1 group individually was dropping a mean of 70 planes a month. Harris and his team of the Victor reached the parking. The Lancaster will have been started and verified earlier in the period. Harris, as master, would have endorsed the Form 700, indicating that he has studied the plane and is content that it is flight ready. Still, teams must be in the plane at least 1 hour before departure to verify and re-verify the operation of every device. The team's flight leader pulls up and verifies that all is fine. He, like every person on the station, bids them best fortune. The Victor has been sitting in the breeze on a boreal aerodrome in winter. Within, everything is either iced or dripping with moisture. This is the least wanted team spot. Separated from the rest of the team, he is the primary target of the Nazi evening interceptors. The death percentage of back shooters is the greatest of all aviators. This cupola has what is called the Gransden Lodge change. Some of the plastic is detached, which boosts the shooter's evening sight at the cost of his ease. The mid-top shooter stores his pack. It would be unfeasible to work the weapons carrying one. Air shooters recognize that blocked by the weapons, air, and radio cords, they have scant time to recover their packs in the dark. The chair barely looks sufficient for a 7-hour journey. As the shooter verifies his weapons, beneath him, the flyer and flight technician make their path through the slim, tight body. A wartime bomber is stuffed with gear, creating constant blockage. The crucial exit door is verified. One of the main blockages on the path to the cabin is the Lancaster's notorious primary beam. Hard enough to climb across with the plane still on the soil, but to get across it in the dark, carrying a pack, with a broken plane, maybe burning, tumbling in a flood with liquid oil, is almost unfeasible. The radio worker takes his spot before the 1154-55 radio set and turns on the phone. Supported by his flight technician, Flight Lieutenant Harris belts in. Behind his skull is the only piece of metal shield on a Lancaster. Its task is to guard the most crucial bit of gear on board, the flyer's skull. Crucial, for active Lancasters carry neither co-flyers nor double wheels. The mean RAF bomber flyer will begin his active flying with roughly 200 hours skill. They are nearly all in their early 20s, and many young masters of those 4-motor, 29-ton planes have yet to learn to operate a car. The moment to begin motors comes close. The wraps which guard the wheels from motor oil are detached by the ground teams, who are deeply proud of their tasks. A battery cart is rolled into place to spare the plane's internal cells from the first cranking strain. The final shield detached is that from the pitot tube. The plane's motors can now be ignited. Outer right initially.
Ignition on. Contact number 3.
One by one, the ice-cold Merlins sputter into life, and as they calm down, the long list of pre-flight checks starts. Ground power toggle, on flight. Altimeters adjusted to FE. Gauge vacuum, 4.5 inches. Pressures and heats, all fine. Munition hatches, shut. Cooler vents, open. Fluid stop force, 300 pounds per square inch. All valid, and the airplane quietly shifts to join the further 39 at Hemswell, making their way along the paths and outer track to the strip and the far objective. As the plane moves, the checks proceed. Autopilot, lever out. DR compass, adjusted to magnetic. Balance, set for flight. Screws, full fine. Fuel, tanks 1 and 2 picked. Lift pumps on. Flaps, set for flight. Moving these large bombers is not simple. The flyers must keep them on the slim 50-foot outer tracks using the stops, rudders, and keenly timed snaps of force on the side motors. If a plane should stray off the cement, it would sink in the rain-soaked turf, breaking the slick timing of the unit's flight and potentially hurting the alignment of the entire strike. The shift and departure of the 40 Hemswell Lancasters, as mentioned in the meeting, is finished with rigid wireless quiet. As one bomber starts its flight run, B. Victor shifts onto the live strip to be stopped by the director's red Aldis bulb until the strip is open. The Emerald. The flyer revs the 4 motors and unties the stops. Beside the strip, regardless of the climate, there is forever a tiny group of base staff to wave the bombers away. Keeping the bomber on the strip demands deep focus. If it veers off at any pace, the frame will break. Max force. Takeoff surge, 3,000 RPM. The blowers providing intake forces of 14 pounds per square inch. The flight technician shouts the speeds as the flyer focuses on keeping the plane straight. 95, 100, 105, 110. The edge of the 2,000-yard strip is getting nearer and nearer. The Rolls-Royce Merlins on takeoff are each yielding 1,390 horsepower and are being pushed far past normal peaceful caps as they lift a total mass of 65,000 pounds. The technician keeps the levers wide open against the pegs. Frame up. A motor crash now would be deadly, as 2,154 gallons of high-grade gas, 10,000 pounds of high explosive, and 7 men become flying. Safe speed, 130 knots. A gifted flyer could now just handle a motor failure. Slowly, the Lancaster rises away. 300 feet. Flaps up. Force lowered to steady rise. Surge +4. As V. Victor settles on the initial stretch of the path to Berlin, far beneath, others are queuing to follow. In the brief winter periods, the remaining planes will be departing at dusk, making flight even more risky. Though the last release of every bomber is managed from the director's shack beside the strip start, the lead director and his staff work from the Aerodromes watchtower. The planes taking off now have their steering lights on. These will be switched off as soon as they exit the loop. In the tower, every shift is marked by the director's team of WAAFs. Beneath them, the waiting Lancasters, motors ticking, are outlined against the dim twilight air as the brief winter's day turns into a long winter's night. The dark bombers now look as what in truth they are, tools of shadow, night hunters of 20th century industrial war. In the deepening shadow, the last of the Hemswell Lancasters, expecting an emerald, will soon be on their path to Berlin. It will be 7 hours before they return. For this large strike on the German center, Bomber Command is utilizing about 600 heavies. Pathing them is a tough balance between keeping the dark, massed planes as close together as possible, yet escaping crashes. The directors mark the ground ships of the bombers and note specific planes with characters as they become flying. Bombers from bases all across eastern England are merging to create the main flow, filling the night air, moving east for the shore. Though merely heard in the towns and hamlets far beneath, they are being seen on radar screens, and their advance told to the Group Mission Hall at Bawtry Hall, where WAAF markers shift the icons for number 1 group's 300-plus planes. The bombers still keep total wireless quiet. When past British radar reach, HQ can merely trust the planned path and timing for a guess of the strike's advance. The bomber flows are still rising over the North Sea. It requires the packed Lancasters past 40 minutes to rise to their combat peak of 20,000 feet. The mission staff at Bawtry Hall report the advance of number 1 group flow to Bomber Command at High Wycombe. The aircraft are presently at height, traveling at 210 miles per hour, heading 090 magnetic. And shortly, trackers will announce hostile shore ahead. Their advance is presently being marked by further radars. In V Victor, the team settled down to the difficult task of steering a large bomber at night. The flying team of a Lancaster are clustered together. The flyer, behind him, Nav in his screened bay, with his digital steering helps, H2, S, and G. These helps have shifted steering from a craft into a science. The G-box, which reads pulse cues from England, allowing the tracker to fix the bomber's location to within a mile or so. Utilizing G, the tracker is figuring out the force and path of the gusts at 20,000 feet. The Victor is one of the planes told to send this data back to group, since the real gusts at great heights often vary from those predicted. A WAF sends a cue asking for the upper gusts. The Victor's radio worker confirms and sends the needed specifics. At 20,000 feet, 280, 25 knots. The tracker, utilizing the found gust, fixes his mark. At Bawtry Hall, the real gusts are presently resent on the group's wave to all their bombers, allowing the trackers to fix their drift, keep a precise path, and also to set the gust on the strike sites. Utilizing a blend of H2S and his Dalton tool, the Victor's tracker finds his location, as it is nearly time for the brief shift in path. Tracker to captain, shift path 137 compass. Guess 31 minutes to objective. Watch out for the TIs. The target setter has exited his travel spot in the front gun cupola and prepares his strike site with the gust pace and path told by the tracker. The Victor, which is to be one of the initial planes above the objective, is presently settling on the long approach, the team watching for the initial of the lead plane's objective indicator lights. The target setter verifies the 16 strike pick toggles, which will drop the munitions in a planned order, keeping the balance of the plane. Other Lancasters are seen flying in close group. All around, mostly hidden, bombers are on their closing direct striking run in. Straight ahead, the TIs drop above the dark city beneath. The Victor travels straight and flat, however intense the flak. The target setter watches the TIs in his strike site. The tracker finds an H2S objective fix. 8 miles to the targeting spot, path looks fine. The objective is presently clearly seen. Big blazes have started, and the mixed scarlet and emerald objective indicators are drifting down. The flak shooters attempt to blast them out. The foe also fires fake TIs to cheat the target setters, but the Germans never managed to get the shades, mainly the scarlets, quite right. The lights were rarely high enough, and the trickery seldom worked. Once a big strike begins, it very fast grows up to its awful peak. Even from nearly 4 miles up, the fire is terribly striking, although oddly quiet, the dulling blast from the bomber's 4 motors drowning out all other noises. Through the haze, the target setter finds the right scarlet T-eyes and the targeting spot. Strike hatches open, main toggle on, munitions primed and picked. The tracker has a fine H2S fix, giving a guessed 2 minutes to go. Intense flak is popping around the Lancaster. Metal bits clatter against the frame. More objective indicators drop, released by the circling main bomber to fix the targeting spot. Night strikes always tend to move back. The Victor is presently right above the flaming city. Another Lancaster passes beneath, outlined against the blazes. In peril from munitions from above, as well as the flak shooters beneath, the target setter presently has the scarlet T-eyes slowly moving up his sight. He shouts to his captain, "Left, left, steady, steady." For other members of the team, clock stops. Steady, steady. Munitions away. The Lancaster rises up as the strike weight departs, nearly hitting a pile of fire bombs dropped from another plane above. The target setter verifies his pick toggles. Happily, no stuck munitions. The strike hatches are shut, and Harris turns B Victor above the flaming city. The tracker watches his night interceptor alert radar, fish pond, part of H2S. It starts showing a signal. Shooters, fish pond signal, left rear, down. The back shooter shouts, "Twist left, Captain, twist left." As the shooters fire, the big bomber is thrown to left. It is a frantic step, putting a massive force on the frame. Even slight harm from flak in a vital spot can cause the taxed body to fail. V Victor returns to steady flying. The master asking for accounts of any harm, since it is sure that the hostile interceptor landed at least 1 strike. The right inner container has been pierced. The technician moves the staying gas from the wrecked container. He performs some math and announces a duration of 2 hours, 10 minutes, with the blend fully thinned out. Inside the mission hall at Bawtry Hall, WAAF markers are able presently to follow the returning bombers as they arrive within reach of British radar. Wireless quiet is useless after a strike, so VHF is utilized once past the hostile shore to aid the planes down to their stations. The initial returning planes are presently touching down. Inside the mission hall, emerald discs mean safe arrivals. Inside the Hemswell watchtower, it is presently clear that the predicted mist is gathering. The directors, utilizing VHF, call the Lancasters circling above, providing them their levels in the queue. After a large strike like tonight's, and in worsening climate, it may take up to 2 hours to get all the returning bombers safely down. Planes steered by extremely exhausted men, hunting the dark soil for this most prized view, the Aerodrome light. H.L. Hemswell. Shortly, the light path appears. As every Lancaster safely arrives, her team feel whatever charm they might have placed their hope in. Another mission over, one closer the charmed 30, which finishes their active cycle. The returning Hemswell unit planes are noted down. The director recognizes that it is too soon to judge deaths, praying some non-arrivals have arrived at different stations. As the teams are verified, Harris and V Victor are missing. Yet his plane was one of the initial to depart and ought be home by now. But clock enough still for V Victor, even if the climate is growing worse moment by moment. The teams that have arrived go to the questioning bay for debriefing. Their labels are verified, and they gather cups of tea, heavily spiked with rum. The teams stay together for the debriefing, shifting from desk to desk as they are questioned by the data officials. many of those WAAFs. How was the flak? How was the TI signaling? Did you witness any plane go down? Next, the experts who embody the many technical roles. Was there any issue with the plane, the motors, wireless, gauges, weapons, gas system, radar? Did H2S provide fine echoes? At what peak reach did G stay active? Not merely data officials have remained awake all night. Even though the men are very weary and the questioning is far from favored, it is vital. The debriefing must be managed while the strike is still vivid in the men's thoughts. So, although they are spent and still muted from the 6-hour beating of the motors, the questioning proceeds team by team, while the base leader and unit leaders create a wide view of the strike, its gains, and its certain deaths. Those officials recognize all too clearly what this implies in mortal words. 10 of Hemswell's planes are believed to be witnessed to fall by the different teams. The spots are guessed, but proof is unfeasible. And nobody has witnessed V Victor since the objective. There is yet period for lost planes to come back, but a further concern is the constantly failing climate. Constantly dropping height, V Victor is yet above hostile land and will not chance sending a report. The Hemswell questioning bay is empty now. The teams in their hall are eating their usual meal of bacon and egg, a quite real luxury in wartime Britain, where the non-military allowance is 1 egg a week. The unit leader and the solitary WAF data official stay. V Victor is presently far late, but there is yet hope. The skilled CO recognizes that cleverly steered, the bomber with motors spinning on a thin blend could yet be flying for a further hour. Thus, they stay. The plane is presently down to 2,000 feet. At that height, with a clouded sky above and dark soil beneath, merely radar can find their location. The tracker gets a G mark near the Dutch shore. The master concludes he can chance an SOS and location report. The tracker hands the location to the wireless worker. They are very low, but with fortune ought to be able to reach group, where the signal staff are attending on the assigned waves for the soft Morse codes. The brief signal is written down, the ciphered groups trivial to the workers, who recognize nonetheless from the call name and wave that it is from a plane of their division. The signal is deciphered, and the note, now recognized to be from the Victor, is called through to the group's mission room. The group mission official marks up the SOS. His interest now is to get the wrecked Lancaster done safely. But the primary issue is the growing mist covering, one by one, the aerodromes in eastern England. The amber card means yet another of the division stations is presently shut. By the period V Victor is set to arrive, all the eastern aerodromes will be misted in. The officials in missions recognize that the bomber will not possess enough gas to travel over to a clear station in the west. Figuring the probable reach staying to V Victor, the mission staff conclude on a path of deed. They call Hemswell to instruct the local flight tower to douse their light path and to tell the Victor's master, when in RT reach, that he must turn to Ludford Magna, the solitary one of number 1 group stations that is fitted to land planes in mist. Radar gauge landing setups simply do not exist in 1944, at least not in the shape that can land wrecked planes in thick mist. The only likely choice is merely to scatter the mist, if merely briefly. The method employed is costly and basic, fog-intensive dispersal operation, or as it's recognized by the aviators, FIDO. the burning of thousands of gallons of gas to practically melt away the haze. The late Lancaster is presently above the North Sea, and the weary team feel that they may at least sip the warm coffee brought from Hemswell. Many teams are too cautious to sip it sooner. It is thought to be testing luck. There is another, more functional motive. To sip, one must detach one's breathing mask, and that could be risky at 20,000 feet. At Ludford Magna, the FIDO is starting to be useful. The warmth from the flaming gas is enough to scatter the haze and mist from the close area of the strip, allowing a plane to arrive. The task requires about 20 minutes. While there are often holes in the blazes fed from the tubes lining the strip, those holes tend to lower the method's value. From the Lancaster, the FIDO strip is a prized view. The flyer slows down for the arrival and rebalances the plane. The technician drops the frame. Screws are shifted into fine angle. The weary flyer now must focus deeply, since the mist is merely scattered about the close area of the strip, and the FIDO blazes create much smoke. An emerald open to arrive. Harris recognizes that he quite likely has merely enough gas for one arrival. The warm air from the long rows of blazes is creating shaking, and the flames are very near should a wheel pop and the Lancaster veer off the strip. The rows of fire are yet not ideal. They have not been flaming quite long enough, but they shall work. The team catch the squeal as the bomber's wheels hit the strip. After 7 hours, 23 minutes flying, they have succeeded. Another mission finished. Ludford Magna tell Group HQ of V. Victor's safe arrival. Arrived away, Ludford is put beside Harris's label. FIDO gear at various RAF aerodromes throughout World War II safely arrived 2,486 Allied planes in mist, which otherwise would have to have been left by pack and ruined. On the scraps of its gas, V. Victor is led to parking on the unknown aerodrome. The team yet must perform shutdown checks. When those are finished, a coach arrives from Hemswell to fetch them.
Hello, Dickie.
What do you mean? Oh, quite all right, sir, but just a little bit shaken when I got a QBB of 400 feet.
After several hours cramped in their seats and turrets, the crew are stiff and cold. The solid ground seems to sway as their aircraft did, and the engines still roar in their ears, and will continue to do so for some time to come. Because smoking is strictly banned in every RAF plane, the initial thing most team members perform on exiting is to ignite a cigarette. And they now meet an hour's trip, since they too will need to be questioned at Hemswell. The Lancaster will be studied in daybreak, partly gassed, and flown to Hemswell for fixes to its wrecked gas containers. In the Hemswell questioning bay, the corporal is told by the watchroom that V. Victor's team have reached the station. Harris and his team are the final from the station that shall be returning from the Berlin strike. Late or not, they receive their tea, rum, and snacks. For everyone involved, it's been a lengthy evening. The unit leader and the WAF data official would have stayed until there existed no feasible hope of any lost plane coming back. Despite the period, V. Victor's team will be questioned as strictly as the rest. Was the TI signaling fine? Did you strike the main objective? What about the interceptor strike? How much alert did Fishpond provide? Did the shooters land strikes? The inquiries proceed on and on. For the team, it feels like remembering moments from a different life. Yet 4 hours back, they were above the German center, Berlin. They will likely be above it or a different flaming objective tomorrow evening, and the evening after that, until their cycle is finished or they meet their end. Actually, Harris and his team outlived their cycle of missions and the battle. Harris, his actual name is Bob Chandler, was merely 22 in 1944. When he was released in 1946, he'd traveled a sum of 1,733 hours, and he has never traveled since. After the battle, he became a Northampton bookkeeper, but this is a phase of his existence that he, like the thousands of other aviators, can never erase. This movie, the sole recognized tinted record of the RAF throughout World War II, finishes as it started, with Lancasters being readied for a further peak exertion strike. And so on and on, until May the 8th, 1945, when the Triumph March at Hemswell, as elsewhere, signaled the close of the battle against Nazi Germany. It had been a long day's trek, which had cost the Royal Air Force solely 79,281 aviators killed in battle. To those youthful men, whose ultimate offering is nowadays occasionally dismissed, the solitary, empty aerodromes stay as their somber monuments.
Every aircraft has a story that deserves to be told. Don't let these legends fade into the past. Like this video and subscribe to our channel and help us keep aviation history alive.
Throughout the great global conflict, the British rural landscape was, in Churchill's phrasing, dotted with aerodromes, past 700 of those. Many have long since vanished. Others, although deserted, remain still. This represents RAF Hemswell within Lincolnshire, which since the close of 1943 was flying Avro Lancasters for No. 1 Group Bomber Command. It is daybreak. The morning crew has replaced the evening, installing a Rolls-Royce Merlin motor to substitute one wrecked in combat. There are 2 Lancaster units stationed at Hemswell, 150 and 170, with a formal allocation of 20 planes apiece. There are merely 2 extra bombers accessible, and even if planes fallen in battle are substituted, the units are required to preserve their combat power through local fixes. To reach this, RAF mechanics labor throughout the day, as this is a period when, evening after evening, the message maximum exertion follows the combat instructions from Bomber Command. In periods of tranquility, a motor swap might require a week. Throughout World War II, it is finished in exactly 5 hours. Active bombers seldom enter the sheds, all standard maintenance and small fixes being performed at the parking spots across the aerodromes. It is likewise unusual for them to merely expire, since the combat life duration of a Lancaster bomber totaled just 40 hours flight period. The casualties, for the most part, are from Nazi night interceptors. To aid resisting these strikes, this group substitutes the 4 303 weapons in the back cupolas with double 50s, which possess a much higher striking force. The task of servicing and charging the weapons is performed by the technicians. Now, the fluid lifting of the weapons is verified. However, a much more potent protection for the bombers arrives not from the technicians, but from the experts with RCM, radio countermeasures. These are the digital instruments of the hidden battle that is conducted outstep and counterstep within the dark heavens above Germany, using hushed labels, Oboe, G, H2S, and Window, all employed either to baffle the protections or to lead the bombers toward the objective and back again. A functional RAF bomber base and its outposts has a force of 2,600 leaders and personnel, all straight or indirectly supporting the planes and their teams. Inside them, the imaging department, who presently come with equipment which supply a vital way of verifying the team's efficiency. But what we witnessed is merely the peak of a sophisticated structure. Bawtry Hall, center of number 1 group, Bomber Command. The morning at center starts, like every other in 1944, by assessing and scrutinizing the outcomes of yesterday evening's strike, while the workers are anticipating the message from Bomber Command, which shall hold the specifics of the objective for today. Amidst the RAF leaders at Group Command are non-military analysts and contact officials from the different branches. Within this instance, a commander from the military's anti-aircraft department, who, along with further colleagues of the crew, are drafting a thorough account on yesterday evening's strike by this division's planes. The WAAF wing official picture evaluator has marked on yesterday evening's objective chart the drop location of every plane's munitions, as shown by the robotic equipment, for study by the division's air official leading. And the charts and filmic copies are brought to the AOC's gathering. The AOC, an air brigadier and a flyer personally, is skilled in picture evaluation. Aerial scouting planes have flown over the objective at early dawn. Their data on film frequently varies from the aviator's occasionally overconfident assertions during questioning. The AOC currently strictly reviews the post-strike records. The picture evaluator has marked the specific strikes on the objective. AP represents the assigned targeting spot of the strike. The dropping precision is studied three-dimensionally and the findings debated. The findings of yesterday evening's strike are now purely the interest of the tacticians at Bomber Command. Inside the mission hall at Bawtry, the crew are getting specifics of tonight's objective. It shall be the major metropolis, Berlin, and is a peak exertion strike. At this point, there are merely 6 hours before the initial of the division's bombers shall depart. Before that exists a vast amount of readiness and precise plotting. The range to the objective is calculated, and the petrol and munition weight is determined. The objective shall now be disclosed to the expectant unit leaders. For this, the mission official creates a concurrent phone and teletype circuit to alert all number 1 group units on adjacent combat aerodromes. The mission proceeds as the data official requests Berlin scout images and the objective charts for the AOC's midday plotting assembly that shall handle tonight's strike. The specific objectives and targeting spots for number 1 group shall now be identified. The charts are consequently verified and matched with images of the prior strike on this objective. Then they are brought to the gathering. The AOC's assembly is crucial since it aligns the planes from number 1 group with bombers from different divisions also participating in the strike. Evening bombers travel mostly hidden from each other. Thus, a rigid schedule of paths, intervals, heights, and velocity is vital to gather the strike and prevent crash. There shall be 600 bombers above the objective in only a 20-minute window. To reach this level of gathering, the primary necessity is to learn what the climate shall be toward, above, and back from the objective. The Met Bureau is one of the scant units at group manned by civilians. The head Met official debates the prediction with his crew and then brings the weather map to the assembly to provide the AOC a Met summary for the strike. Since the European climate patterns usually shift from west to east, the RAF holds a benefit over the Luftwaffe. Nevertheless, atmospheric prediction in 1944 continues to involve a component of fortune. The AOC understands this and queries his personal Met origins. Thus briefed, the climate is debated.